Dishonored. I really wanted to like you. Given the developmental antecedents of the studio that spawned thee, there is absolutely no viable reason why I should not want to while away the wee morning hours fondling every clammy crevice of your venerated no-no places. Yet the combination of well-meaning design choices that were ultimately calamitous, a story that makes even the most perverted Sonic the Hedgehog fanfic fever dreams sound like Tennyson, and some of the most repugnant derivative art design you will ever have the misfortune to behold have somehow congealed to unceremoniously suck this game's potential drier than Bob Newhart's memoirs. To clarify, this game is eminently playable, even outright fun. Given only a fleeting glance, it seemed to have all the makings of an instant classic, but alas, the first cracks in the facade materialize in the form of one of the least compelling video game narratives I am ever likely to be subjected to. Dishonored is a standard revenge tale, and a standard revenge tale, absent a compelling narrative, outright requires the presence of a magnetic, innately appealing protagonist, which makes the immutable fact that Corvo has all the appeal of a school bus fire all the more egregious. Corvo is a human piece of flotsam, adrift in an ocean of fictitious mediocrity, lingering for pondersome intervals for no other reason than to fall victim to yet another painfully uninspired plot point. And like everyone else in this game, he also happens to be uglier than Quasimodo's retarded cousin. Herniated ballsack, earth to the art designer. You may have been shooting for the love child of Garrett and Altair, but between the hood, the mask, and the Yngwie Malmsteen jacket, what you wound up with was Hobo Skeletor. And don't disregard a criticism of the game's story as immaterial either. Unlike shooters, RTS games, and the entirety of Infinity Ward's output, story is central to the success of a given stealth game. If a stealth game fails to immerse the player, then it already fillets festering fields of feculent phallus. Alliteration! You see, stealth thrives on tension. Tension thrives in a sense of menace. Menace is a byproduct of an imposing game world, and the game world is inevitably castrated if its central story is inane and forgettable. As Corvo, you phone your way through mission after mission, murdering or sparing complete asshole strangers you've yet to be provided with a sufficient reason to give a shit about, continually anticipating an original storyline twist that just never arrives. In so doing, Arcane have inadvertently reduced the impact of Dishonored's already immensely flawed core stealth gameplay. Gameplay which suffers mightily, by the way, from the absence of a viable stealth feedback system. My overpowering distaste for Metal Gear Solid notwithstanding, at least Solid Snake's radar offers relevant information regarding the noise level and visibility of the player without simultaneously turning them into a supreme fucking demigod. Dishonored wants to be a modern successor to Thief, but Arcane Studios, the developmental Mr. Magoo, sadly lacks the competence and vision to fashion an audio engine robust enough to make Subversion a viable alternative without resorting to the outlandishly overpowered X-ray vision upgrade. Without the vision upgrade, you're the son of Helen Keller, and with it, you're the son of God, which once again might have been ameliorated had the designers not held fast to their fanatical first-person-only premise like Jim Sterling clinging to the final bear claw in the dozen. It's a considerably less Herculean task to disguise your bowling shoe ugly graphics engine with these amateurish animations, last-gen textures that have more pop-in problems than a defective tampon applique, and Fable fucks Disney art style aren't thanks to glorious first-person perspective in a perpetual state of being shoved in your floating disembodied face. I recognize that everyone's got to go their own way on this issue, but with no due respect, the outright myth that first-person perspective is inherently more immersive needs to take a seat beside the Easter Bunny, Santa Claus, and Obamacare in the waiting room of prevaricating purgatory. To say nothing of the fact that it's outright dog shit that Corvo's face is plastered all over every Dishonored ad, poster, and promotional item, yet for some reason when the actual fucking game starts, he skips town like he's dodging alimony. Further, it feels as if Arcane Studios are so busily engaged in their perpetual narcissistic orgy, tossing their own salad for fashioning open-ended levels with innumerable methods of infill and exfiltration, that they wound up supporting only two styles of core stealth gameplay. You can either play as Corvo, which inevitably entails crouching behind riot shields so conveniently placed it makes the opprobrious chest-high walls of Gears of War look like permanent scenic fixtures by comparison, cranking your sound effects to 11 on the remote chance that you may in fact hear a human footstep at 5 feet's fucking remove, leaning further to the left than Harvey Smith's Twitter feed and praying to the nine divides for a fucking light gem because there's no practical method of determining how hidden you actually are. Or conversely, you can play as Hobo Skeletor, the omnipotent engine of death who can peer through walls, stop time, and launch fucking tornadoes from his hands at will, the unkempt ubermensch that can teleport directly above you and slam his goofy retractable plastic sword into your epiglottis and dispose of the corpse by summoning an ashen quintet of starving rodents, which he will then possess in order to flee the fucking scene, presumably while on a lunch break from his day job of kickboxing with Bengal fucking tigers. And here's the thing, exactly exactly one of those playstyles is actually fucking fun. 90% of the game's intended audience want to play as Corvo, only to find the game's flawed mechanics accommodate playing as Hobo Skeletor exclusively. If lead designer Harvey Smith's name instills even the faintest sense of deja vu, it's because this man has worked on Looking Glass and Ion Storm masterpieces like System Shock and the original Deus Ex. However, the man has more baggage than Mary Poppins in that he also worked for Ion Storm during the development of Deus Ex Invisible War and Thief Deadly Shadows.
Doc says lots of ailments could be avoided altogether if only we didn't bathe so frequent like.
Shit.
Both of which he has on numerous occasions expressed considerable disdain for. And if that's the case, then Dishonored is the most frenzied overreaction to his displeasure with both of those titles. In an effort to assuage the sense of increased linearity in the former, he's unintentionally given rise to Dishonored's wafer-thin, bromidic narrative. In an attempt to mitigate the former's shoebox-sized levels, he's instead fashioned morbidly obese, multifarious missions completely devoid of dramatic context. The immensity of the levels in Thief and Deus Ex works precisely because both those games have such enthralling stories. A massive level awash in playstyle options yet devoid of a compelling story is an empty sandbox. Grand Theft Auto is fun to fuck around with for an hour, but it's the brilliant storytelling that keeps Vice City discs spinning in PS2s across the world to this very fucking day. The disparity between what we were promised and what arrived on store shelves is as wide as Harvey Smith's mind is narrow, and equally as self-deceived. Arcane told us to expect a compelling balance of otherworldly powers and practical real-world stealth. Then we booted up the game to discover the Corvo's powers are more unbalanced than Mike Tyson with a collapsed eustachian tube. In synopsis, I would have to reluctantly convey upon Dishonored the dubious distinction of being a playable disappointment. It doesn't blow every dick in a 5-block radius, but what I bore horrified witness to while playing this game was Victor Antonoff, the art designer on Half-Life, generating some of the most irksome, uninspired designs of his entire career, and Harvey Smith of Deus Ex fame positively languishing in mediocrity. Set against the doldrums of modern development, it's an amusing but ultimately faulty release. It's only when Dishonored takes its rightful place in the long shadow cast by its spiritual predecessors that this game at last emerges as the unmitigated disappointment that it truly is. I won't incite you to outright avoidance, as this game is at least very much playable, but if the gaming press were spinning any harder in this game's favor, they'd have to assign IGN its own hurricane name. Rent if you must, but temper your enthusiasm, Rageaholics, and if you have occasion on Twitter, inform Harvey Smith that he is an inflamed cunt. I'm Razorfist God fucking Speed.